Good morning. On behalf of the Chief of the South African National Defence Force, I welcome you all. It is a great pleasure to see you all this morning and thanking you for your attendance. My name is Brigadier General Andries Mukwena Mahapa, Director, Defence Corporate Communication. Then the big question that one may ask, what are we doing here? Is to brief or to update the South African public about the role of the South African National Defence Force in Mozambique, the SADC mission named SAMIM. Ladies and gentlemen, please let me request you to stand so that we can observe the moment of silence for the loss of human life in KZN due to flooding, please. Thank you. We may be seated. And we continue to pray that the mop-up operation in KZN becomes successful. I will now request the Chaplain General of the South African National Defence Force to open the session the correct way. Chaplain, sir.
Chief South African National Defence Force Commission to conduct the short of caps. To the Chief of the South African National Defence Force, the Chief of Staff, South African National Defence Force, our service chiefs and divisional chiefs, the head of communication, the Defence Sergeant Major, members of the media. Allow me to greet you all this morning at this press conference and say good morning to everybody. Good morning to everybody. Thank you. Let me respect and acknowledge all expressions of faith that are under this roof. We read with confidence and adoration the following scripture lesson. I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Then I said, here am I. Send me. Send me. Let us bow our heads and pray. Gracious Lord, make us victorious over every circumstance. Make us patient with every person. Give us joy, which no circumstance or no person will ever take from us. We yearn to decrease, that you may increase as we serve our country. We thank you for each and every gift that you have been given, and that we might use them to serve well for the common good of our country and her people. Serving is our calling, and living well is our destiny. We thank you, O God, for the privilege to be found worthy to serve. We thank you, O God, for the power of your love in our hearts that will not let us hold back in our service to our nation, especially to those whose plight needs to be changed for the better. Hear our prayer, O Lord, and equip us for this service. Help us to serve well by pouring our lives as an offering and sacrifice. Help us to serve well, knowing that every detail of our lives is under your scrutiny. We ask all this in your mighty name, and may all the people of God say amen.
Thank you, Chaplain General. I think now we are ready to go. Now, going back to the business of the day, allow me to introduce my panel so that when it's time for question and answers, you know who to direct your questions to. May I also request then when you have to ask the question, please stand. We have the mic above you so that they can capture the sound. I'll start with the Chief of the South African National Defence Force, General Mapshanya. Thank you, sir. The Chief of Staff of the South African National Defence Force, Lieutenant General Yam. Thank you, sir. Chief Human Resources, Vice Admiral Kubu. Thank you, sir. Chief Joint Operations, Lieutenant General Sangweni. Thank you, sir. Head of Communication, Mr. Dlamini. Thank you. Lastly, the Sergeant Major of the Defence Force, Sergeant Major Mchacheni. Thank you very much. Please, at this moment, allow me to request the Chief to brief us. Chief, thank you very much, sir.
I'm debating whether I should take it off or I should brief you with the mask on. When I came in, I deliberately looked around and saw that everybody's putting on a mask. And I decided that, okay, fine, then I will leave mine. So, to the Chief of the Staff of the South African National Defence Force and the entire Military Command Council, generals, admirals, officers, and sergeant major of the Defence Force, and all sergeant majors and non-commissioned officers and fellow soldiers, our esteemed friends from the Fourth Estate, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. When I came in, I looked around and I saw a rigger on my right, and when she waved, it reminded me of what people were saying. They said, why you and Erika? I said, is she your girlfriend? Then when I came in, I said, oh, my girlfriend is here, I must behave. So, to all members of the media, welcome. Allow me to also show appreciation to the program director as well as facilitators of this important platform. The head of communication of the Department of Defense, Mr. Spiwe Dlamini, and the Director, Defense Corporate Communications, Brigadier General Mahap, for making this briefing really to come up. We are honored to host you here today, specifically because we are both charged with a sacred responsibility, both to let our people understand and know what is it that the Defense Force is all about, what is it that as taxpayers, their money is being utilized for. So this is a very important event for me because it allows us to reach out to our people and let them understand that in whatever we do, we are accountable to them as the citizens. And our social compact that we have with them to say we will defend and protect them speaks to our accountability aspects and our being subjected to civil oversight. So once again, to the media houses that are here for coming in this morning and allowing us to share and give us the opportunity to interact, because our two institutions, the military and the media, are enjoined and enjoy cordial relations for the benefit of all our country's citizens. And as the military, we strive to bolster a healthy consensus on defense with our citizens. And that can only be achieved when our reason for existence is clearly explained to the public through the media, so as to ensure that we don't sound our own trumpet. The media helps the people of South Africa by shining a light on the defense programs in the quest to uphold that crucial principle of civil control of our military and also foster accountability amongst our officers. When we undertake our constitutionally empowered mandate to defend South Africans against aggression and to promote security and support them in their times of need, like we are doing currently in KZN, as a last line of defense for our people. We need our media to also, on the other side, do its job and ensure that this crucial mandate is firmly and clearly, as well as fairly and factually projected to the citizens in order to empower them to make better decisions on issues pertaining to their understanding of the role of defense in democracy. As the military, we value you and know your worth and commend you for having worked with us at the height of COVID, when no any other person actually understood what is it that is required. The media was always on our side in trying to ensure compliance in terms of the regulations. It will be amiss of me if I don't commend the media for their role during the July unrest, where they actually worked as our force multiplier in terms of ensuring that South Africans are informed and are also reminded of the importance to continue to defend our hard-earned democracy. Allow me to say also that you did not only provide the much needed information to the public about our mandate and role, but you also cajoled us where we erred, because we are human and we tend to make mistakes at times. And we welcome your inquisitive nature and the robustness of the discussion and engagement that we had as a collective. As Chief of the South African National Defence Force, understanding the fast-paced nature of your work, let me also urge and encourage you to never ever sacrifice journalistic principles of striving to be factual, truthful, balanced, fair, robust, and not being conformist in reporting. At times, just be unorthodox in your reporting, because sometimes that is helpful in a sense that such reportage will result in society having a more clearer, refined view of programs, not only of the military, but societal values. When journalists do their job to the best of their abilities to report factually and accurately on defense issues, the winner is not the defense only, but the winner becomes the people of South Africa, on whose behalf we carry arms. Colleagues from the media, the Military Command Council now has the opportunity to update you on the status of the South African National Defence Force in Mozambique. As Chief of the National Defence Force, I am glad that we are finally addressing you on Operation Vikela, which is the code name for the operation that we are currently conducting in Mozambique, and our contribution to the Southern African Development Community mission in Mozambique, which is dubbed SAMIM, following an extended period of time when it was not quite practical to take this route. The situation in Mozambique was discussed in various seminars and summits of SADC head of states, and finally the SADC head of state summit that took place in South Africa, which was followed by the extraordinary summit of the head of states and government of SADC held in Maputo, the Republic of Mozambique, on the 23rd of June 2021. The summit gave birth to the mandate for SADC standby force to be deployed in support of Mozambique to combat terrorism and acts of violent extremism, mostly carried out by Al-Sunnah wa Jama'ah and their affiliates in Cabo Delgado region. SAMIM is staffed by troops from 8 troop-contributing countries, with ourselves, Republic of South Africa, Angola, Botswana, Democratic Republic of Congo, Lesotho, Malawi, United Republic of Tanzania, and Zambia, working in collaboration with the Forças Armadas de Defensa do Mozambique, FADM. Currently, as an agreement between Rwanda and Mozambique, the Rwandan troops are also in the area of operation under the invitation of the host country. This is a bilateral arrangement between Mozambique and Rwanda. The mandate of SAMIM extends to neutralizing terrorist threat and restoring security in Cabo Delgado and surrounding areas, and strengthening and maintaining peace and restoring law and order in affected areas. SAMIM also seeks to create a safe environment for collaborating humanitarian agencies to provide relief to communities affected by terrorist activities, including internally displaced persons. Since the start of this deployment in support of the host country's military forces, SAMIM forces conducted several major operations, and of late, starting in October 2021, there was an operation that was codenamed Buffalo. That is a combined operation that involved SAMIM, the Rwandese, as well as the forces for the defense of Mozambique. And this operation was concluded in January 2022. These operations led to a capture and destruction of several Al-Sunnah wa Jama'ah terrorist bases in the area east of Chai settlement and the river Misalo in Migomia district in Cabo Delgado province. During these operations, 31 terrorists were killed, while 16 women, 8 children, and 2 elderly males believed to have been abducted by terrorists were rescued. The victims are currently under the care of national authorities. Furthermore, SAMIM forces confiscated weapons that include the RPG-7s, launchers, PKM machine guns, and 48 AK-47s, rifles, as well as grenades. Other equipment confiscated include vehicles, motorbikes, cell phones, and technological devices. During this Operation Buffalo, SAMIM forces met strong resistance from the terrorists, but were able to inflict fatal casualties and disrupt Al-Sunnah activities, as well as continue to dominate and pursue the terrorists in the operational area. Our forces continue to inflict massive losses to the terrorists as we speak. Whilst we are fighting, we are human. We also suffer casualties. I want to say to the people of South Africa that the heroic efforts by SAMIM. So one of our heroes, in the name of Corporal Tibuho Hatebe, killed in action, whilst a number of FADAM's soldiers also suffered casualties. The injured members are currently recuperating and they're on their way to full recovery. On the 28th of December 2021 to the 5th of January 2022, the force commander, who is a South African Army General, Major General Xolani Mankai, visited troops on the front line and on debriefing mission. I happened to have listened to his presentation when I visited Cabo Delgado and visited the units that are deployed in all fronts. Major General Mankai commended the South African contingent and particularly the elements of the rapid deployment contingent for their gallantry in being able to disrupt the efforts of the terrorists. He urged them to continue exhibiting military professionalism and courage as they assist the government of Mozambique in fighting terrorism and violent extremism. This is the message that I have also conveyed when I visited all troops that are deployed in various areas, not only South Africans, but when I spoke to the Malawans, when I spoke to the Tanzanians, when I spoke to the Botswana as well as South Africans, I conveyed the same message, and the spirit was high. Their morale was high. SAMIM forces are well received by locals in the area and have embarked on limited humanitarian relief efforts as well as civil-military cooperation in Mozambique to try and support the people that are in need and leverage support for our operations there. Because when you have engagement with the local people, they themselves understand that the presence of SAMIM is for their defense and protection. We have donated Christmas hampers to an entity known as Save Our Souls Children's Village in Pemba, whilst the part of the contingent in Mueda district also donated equipment and supply to Mueda Rural Hospital. We are also accepting members of the community in our health facilities to assist them when they are in dire need. We are making strides in our effort to win the hearts and minds of these locals in Mozambique because we are there purely for their interest. The operation of SAMIM is supported by the Regional Coordinating Mechanism, which is dubbed the RCM, which reports to the head of the mission and the SADC Executive Secretary. Since its deployment, SAMIM has registered a number of milestones, including recapturing of villages, bringing back members that were displaced, dislodging terrorists from their bases, and seizing weapons and war materials which have contributed in creating havoc in the area. So SAMIM had brought relative stability and security in the area, such that people are feeling safe to go back to their homes. Additionally, members of the community have also expressed their confidence that with the presence of SAMIM forces, they feel free and can go back to their day-to-day activities and have their normal lives. The South African National Defence Force role as part of Operation Vikela is pivotal in these missions. And with the recent arrival of the Combat Team Alpha as part of the advanced team in the mission area, the South African footprint just got bigger and stronger. In that way, making it easier for our people to be protected. During the Troika meeting held in South Africa on the 3rd of April 2022, the South African International Relations Minister, Minister Naledi Pandor, told her counterparts that the SADC mission had made good progress in repelling attacks over the past years, and therefore we will continue to be in solidarity with the people of Mozambique and ensure that the scourge of terrorism is taken out of that part of the country and the region. In so doing, we will also be contributing to the security of the region, because security is relative. If your neighbor is not safe, forget about your own safety. And therefore, the presence of our forces in Mozambique is serving also as a form of keeping the terrorists at bay and allowing South Africans to go on with their lives. I myself have been to the area of operation on numerous occasions, as I said, and I'm satisfied about the volume of work that our soldiers are putting in with other troop contributing nations. We shall restore stability in that part of Mozambique, bearing in mind the proximity with which the area of Mozambique and Cabo Delgado is to our domestic borders. Failure to collectively address the security situation in Mozambique can easily result in our country having to deal with grave security challenges of spillover of the terrorist actions. Colleagues from the media, the Military Command Council, the Military Command Council is here to answer to any issue that you might have on this mission in Mozambique. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief of the South African National Defence Force, for your brief. I'll now request to take 3 questions per round. Please, we know the drill by now. Identify your name, the media house you are coming from, and I'll request you respectfully to stand so that you can be audible enough. It's now open for question. There was the first one here, the second one here, the third that side, and then we'll take the rest the next round. Please, then you can continue. Sorry for it.
My name is Karim Sisi. I'm a freelance journalist. I'm writing to Business Day today. And I have a question about, you spoke about the spillover towards the end of the week. And the US Treasury had some concerns about funding coming from South Africa for the terrorist activities. I just want to know, how concerned are you about spillover? How real is it already?
Sorry, ma'am. The next one? Yeah, the third one is there.
Graham Hoskin, Times Live. General, in regards to the South African troops that are in Mozambique, how many do we have there? How many are still going to be deployed, and by when will the deployment be finished by? Thank you.
Can we have the third one?
Hi, good morning, General and your team. It's Kyle Kumalo here from SABC News. I just want to hear about the plan now for reconstruction, General. What's going to be the role of SANDF, and of course just SAMIM at large as well, but also just in terms of the clarity now, because I see that there are reports around the de-escalation when now SAMIM's role is going to move from level 6 to level 5. If you may just simplify for us on that score. And maybe just a quick one, General, something slightly different. The current floods in KwaZulu-Natal, what's going to be the role of SANDF in terms of the revival of the infrastructure and perhaps providing additional assistance? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now respectfully request the panel to respond to those first three questions, and then we'll go to the next one. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I will take lead in responding to the first question, and then the second question by Trevor, I will let CJ Ops respond to it. I don't like to be like I've got the monopoly of knowledge. So CJ Ops will respond to the troop issues in Mozambique. And then I will also try and touch on the question by Kaelicha. But let me start with Karin's question in that the U.S. Treasury is concerned about the funding from RSA and whether we take the question of the spill over more seriously. Allow me to indicate that the South African society, it's a diverse society. We pride ourselves that whilst we are united in our diversity, we have got a different understanding of how our economy, our infrastructure, and our good governance aspects can be exploited. There is no direct funding, if I may put it that way, coming from South Africa to any terrorist group. South Africa as a country stands united with the rest of the region in declaring that terrorism will never be tolerated. Having said that, the issue of spillover is real because I indicated that security is relative. The relativity of the concept of security demands that you will be fooling yourself if you think that issues that are happening with a neighbor will never affect you. And therefore, we strongly believe that if we do not curb the scourge of terrorism and nip it in the bud whilst it's still on the other side, eventually it will affect the entire region. And South Africa is not immune. And that is how serious we take the threat of a spillover. And we are also preparing and putting measures in place to say, whilst we are in Mozambique, South Africa must also feel protected and defended. I think I will stop at that with regard to that one. The second issue raised by Trevor in that the RS troops in Mozambique, how many do we have currently and how many are we intending to send? I will leave it to Chief Joint Ops to give an insight in that. Chief Joint Ops, General Sangwin.
Thank you, General. In respect of the number of SANDF soldiers that are on the ground in Mozambique under SAMIM, currently we have more than 500 soldiers on the ground. But your question went further as when others are going to deploy and when will be the deployment finished. We have 1,495 approved by the Commander-in-Chief as well as the Parliament of South Africa for the SANDF to deploy and utilize when necessary as the situation unfolds or dictates in the mission area or deployment area. Yeah, I think that's is covering that one. There was a question from Kayalitu, clarity in respect of de-escalation to scenario 5. Well, de-escalation is just a term that is used in this situation, but a more appropriate terminology will be transitioning. As SADC, we are, for SADC missions, we apply the African Union scenario-based framework in terms of peace support operations, which then is scenario 6, 5, right down. So yes, because scenario 6 is the first one, then that's why some people will use that it is de-escalation. But in real terms, it is not de-escalation. Scenario 6 was more in the interventionist approach with small elements for a very limited period of time to go and address the situation aggressively and make the insurgents, or let me rather use the word insurgents and or terrorists, to degrade their combat capabilities, and then they stand back a bit, and then after those conditions are in place, then we transition to scenario 5. Scenario 5 is more on the traditional peacekeeping approach. Scenario 5 does not presuppose that it is less effort. It actually requires more personnel on the ground, more boots on the ground, other than scenario 6. So yes, SADC has taken a conscious decision that we escalate from, we transition from scenario 6 to scenario 5, because scenario 6 did quite very well, incredible successes. That's why currently there is less activities of the terrorists in northern Mozambique, and now people started coming back to their places of residence. Now, traditional peacekeeping is still, there will be military presence where we'll now dominate the ground. But as I believe you are aware of the communique of the summit yesterday, it is in Arrow 5 with a robust mandate, meaning we still retain the offensive authority to attack and destroy where necessary. But scenario 5 allows that traditional peacekeeping is not a military effort only. It includes the other lines of support as we use it in the military, or thematic areas where they will be deployed in the Mozambique mission area, civilian members dealing with politics and diplomacy, handling humanitarian issues, economic and social development, as well as police issues, as well as correctional services. That is much more comprehensive in the effort of SADC to assist and support Mozambique to fight against terrorism. It would have been not prudent if we carried on with only a military solution. So scenario 5 allows a much more comprehensive approach. Well, going out of Mozambique, Kalisha also asked our role in KZN with the disaster due to floods. That situation is currently handled by the provincial joints as part of the security cluster approach. And yes, we've been requested to, we are part of that provincial joints planning and preparation. We've been requested particularly to support and assist with air assets. Yes, last night we started moving aircrafts. One this morning is on the ground in the Durban area of KZN, But basically, the lead here, it is Cocta. Yesterday, there were several meetings of the security cluster where, till late in the evening, where Cocta was presenting and plans, and we're quite well aware that the president will be on the ground today. Then the requirement or need for SANDF support might come through, but basically now the planning from the Prof. Jones was air assets, which I can say one is on the ground. As the situation progress, maybe then we'll be able to provide more. If then there's none, we'll stand back. I believe, Chief, I've covered that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Joint Ops. I just want to add that currently, as the South African National Defence Force, we have got operations that we are conducting. Some of the registered operations are at the contingency level. We have got Operation Chariot. Operation Chariot allows us to support the people of South Africa without prior seeking authorization. So that is why immediately when we were informed that we should form part of the provincial JOCOM, we immediately said, let the Air Force start planning, because there may be a requirement for us to lift whatever people or goods from affected areas. So we started planning, and currently the Air Force is busy providing the necessary air support. We will also, as part of the Prof JOC, start looking at providing some of our engineer capability to go and look at the extent of the damage that has been done, so as collaboratively with the other departments, we will also assist in restoring the infrastructure that had been destroyed. That will be part and parcel of the effort that the South African National Defence Force will put on the ground. I just want to indicate that with regard to the transition from scenario 6 to 5, it is acceptable that whilst you are having the robust force, at the same time you must create conditions for the people of Mozambique to start picking up where things had fallen between the cracks and start going on with their lives. So governance aspects must also be strengthened, because the problem cannot be resolved purely by means of the military. Some of the problems that needs to be done is to get people to start the economic activities. It's to start to see people going back to school. It's to start building infrastructure. It's to start having hospitals that those who are returning back must be able to have a normal life. So this is a positive move to say, wait, whilst we are dislodging the terrorists from their bases, we also need to start thinking of rebuilding the lives of the Mozambicans that had been displaced. So that is the reason why the leadership of the region saw it fit that we should at least start thinking along those lines if we want to see a lasting peace in northern Mozambique. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Can we go to the second round? We'll start here in the first row, then I'll take the two at the back. Noted, sir, on the next round. Please, ma'am.
South Africa, although SANDF is currently deployed in Jersey and so on, we all know about the restrictions in the budget, which are getting more and more severe. How is the Defence Force going to, well, and doing place again as well, because yesterday apparently there were no helicopters available. How is this constant requirement from the SANDF to address the imbalance between the budget and what society and government is requiring from the SANDF, because it's impossible to help while more and more money is being. So, is there any plans to just restore some sanity to and serviceability?
Thank you. Sir at the back.
Thank you. My name is Govin Whittle from EMCA. General, what is the status of El Suna wa Jamaat's capacity at the moment? Taking over one of the bases or the bases, are you reducing the number of terrorists in that region? Tell us anything about the sophistication of this, or whether you have been able to eliminate any of their leaders.
Thank you, Govin. Ma'am?
Rebecca Campbell from Engineering News. So obviously I'm interested in technology. I just want one clarification and then a couple of questions. My hearing is not quite as good as some of the young people here, so I'd like confirmation on the number of South African troops approved for deployment in, but on the technology side, are you making, to support your operations, are you making use of, or are you considering making use of satellite imagery via the South African National Space Agency Earth Observations Division? Can you clarify the role of the South African Air Force? And given that the surgeons have engaged in nautical operations, is the South African Navy involved, or are you planning to deploy naval units, naval?
Thank you very much. I'll allow the chief and the panel to respond to the questions.
Thank you, General Mapa, and to the members that raised the questions. Let me indicate that of the three questions, one from Erika, I will touch on the issue of the budget as well as the current challenges faced by the South African National Defence Force as in relation to the budget issues and serviceability of equipment. And then coming to the question by Gavin on the current status of Al Suna, I will throw it to the panel, both to Chief Joint Ops and coming to the question, Chief Joint Ops and either the Chief of Staff, and then a question by Rebecca, which is quite interesting because technology now in the current situation, technology is the key word in all the wars. And the question that is asked, whether we are making use of satellite imagery that is provided to us, I will cautiously answer to that. And the role of the Air Force, we will touch on that as well as the role of the Navy. Allow me to start off with the one of Erika in terms of our current deployment, that we are deployed both in DRC, Mozambique, and currently we are required to to support the effort in KZN. Indeed, the South African National Defence Force is structured such that we must be able to conduct more than 3 operations at a go. The Joint Force employment requirements had pitted us to plan along those lines. Currently, the assets that we have pledged in the DRC, we are managing to keep up with the requirements of the UN as per our pledge. In Mozambique, we have stuck to what we have pledged. The challenge that Erika is raising in terms of balancing between the expectations of South Africans to see the South African National Defence Force deployed in all these missions versus the current status of our capabilities, indeed, is cause for concern in as far as the budget is concerned. I think we all are aware that the Commander-in-Chief in the State of the Nation address touched on this matter to say, currently with all expectations, the National Defence Force must be capacitated. And that is what the Commander-in-Chief had said, because the Commander-in-Chief had been briefed in terms of the status of his defense force. And part of it is the status of the Air Force. The Air Force is currently having the air assets. We are going to support KZN. We have already started bringing in the aircrafts to the area. The other aspect that we must understand also with regard to the question of disaster and the floods. The floods are not discriminatory. We were also affected in these floods, such that when the other areas adjacent to the Air Force base were flooded, the water didn't decide to spare us. The water also got into our areas. And we were also trying to check some of the assets that, the very same assets that we wanted to deploy last night. We couldn't, because we couldn't just take chances, because the avionics, if the avionics are affected, we will be putting both the lives of the pilots as well as the lives of those that we want to assist in danger. So we said, let us be cautious. Let us look at how the water had affected our assets. But at the same time, we said we cannot just sit back. Let us get some of the platforms from the adjacent areas. And then we started now picking up with the assets that are in PE. Those are the assets that are currently on the ground that we are supporting our people with. And we are also getting other assets from other Air Force bases around the country, so that, because this is now a national disaster, though it is not declared, but as the defense we say, we cannot let our people die, even if it is not yet declared as a national disaster, but we need to plan towards assisting our people. So yes, the budget issue is being addressed at that level, and we are excited that the people of South Africa have now realized that their expectations must be matched by the resources that are put to the defense force. And as such, whatever ambition that our country may have, that ambition needs to be matched by the resources that are commensurate to that ambition. So we cannot have a budget that allows us to buy a Coke and expect me to provide you with a whiskey. A Coke budget cannot be a whiskey budget. Don't ask me for a single malt, and yet I have got a Pepsi budget. That is the thing. So the question is, to all the people of South Africa, what type of a defense force do you want? And as such, what is it that you are prepared to do in terms of ensuring that we package our cake such that the peace that is required to come to the defense will at least ensure that the people that are in other departments can function, because the defense force is your guarantor to ensure that all the other state departments will be able to function. If there is peace and stability, then the people in any department will work in a safe and a secure environment. So I will leave that first for the rest of the panel to deal with. I think I've touched on almost all the elements of the question that was raised by Erika. There is an issue raised by Gavin in terms of the status of Al-Suna, as well as whether we are currently reducing the numbers of the terrorists in the region, as well as the question of the sophistication of the groupings, and whether we have eliminated the leader group of the terrorist groupings. I will let the first to take the floor to be the Hawk or CJ Ops. I see the Hawk nodding. So I say CJ Ops, and then I don't know if Chief of Staff, you will also need to have a bite. And then whilst they are responding to that, I will quickly go and address part of the emergencies in KZN, because we are having this in the middle of a crisis that the country is facing. So it's not out of disrespect that I will have to quickly go out and address to this matter. Chief John Dobbs.
Thank you, General. Well, Chief of the National Defence Force, Ms. Erika has clarified that we were not spared with the floods, inclusive of the SAPS. Yesterday, the SAPS Air Wing also wanted to. They were also in the same situation, that their hangars were flooded and they could not utilize their assets. The question of whether we know whether the Al-Sumawa Jama leader has been eliminated, I will say at this stage, no one in SAMIM or in Mozambique or in all the neighboring member states can say with conviction whether the leader has been eliminated. I think we're quite well aware that in terms of terrorist approach and how they do things, they have small cells, small teams spread all over, and each cell and team has a leader. So if you do attend to one and eliminate, it does not necessarily mean that you have eliminated. They use the approach of radicalization of society. So then they have supporters. The Chief of the National Defence Force indicated that Operation Buffalo, which was in December till January, one of the main leaders was eliminated. But even before that, as from August, September and October, SAMIM, several operations, a number of leaders confirmed were eliminated. And number of bases, not one base, many bases were destroyed. And the chief just touched on the Operation Buffalo, where we combined with the Rwanda's Defense Force. So yes, we believe that its strength has been degraded a bit for now, and that's why they are less offensive from their side. The role of the South African, let me start with the number of personnel approved by the President and the Parliament of South Africa. It is 1,495, 1495. With in the elements of the SANDF that are deployed in Operation Vikela under SAMIM, we have the land elements, meaning the infantry and special forces units. We've got air capabilities. Now addressing the role of the Air Force, we have 4 aircrafts of the Air Force that are in SAMIM. I'm saying not in Operation Vikela, in SAMIM, meaning they are serving SAMIM and all the deployed members under SAMIM, not only South Africans. We also have maritime force elements. Yes, the naval element is on the ground. As far back as August, we had 2 OPVs deployed, and with the first mandate of 3 months, we had planned for that and they had to withdraw. And now with the mandate being extended, then they were rotated with a bigger vessel, which is the frigate. SAS Spion Corps is currently dealing with the maritime environment in the north of Mozambique. Together, not only us, together with Tanzania, they also have a naval vessel in SAMIM. We also have medical support elements. We've got level 1 hospital for our own soldiers that in one of the operational areas. We have deployed composite field engineer element. We also have a medical evacuation team, which is called AMED. We have a GIS team. We have a counter improvised explosive devices team that is deployed. We have got military police. So it's a number of capabilities that are currently deployed in terms of landward component, air components, and naval components. The question or clarity sought in terms of utilization of technology to a limited extent, because technology, when you are in the field, is not something that is easy, but as we develop, we are now utilizing drones as well. There are drones that are deployed and utilized in SAMIM, but in terms of possibility of utilization of the Satellite Space Agency, of the RSA, in terms of geolocation, and in SAMIM there is a fusion, an intelligence fusion cell, which is responsible for that. To a limited extent, I can say we were informed that through that, those that are deployed in the intelligence environment were able to locate the positions of these small teams of terrorists and follow them through the cell phone network system. So I would say, yes, in SAMIM technology it is utilized. It might not be to the desired level and or in terms of complexity, but it is utilized. We are trying. I believe in terms of the tactical and operational questions, I have covered all of them. Chief of Staff.
I think Chief Joint Operations is elaborated on the particular question. I will say that there's been a dislocation of the leadership of the terrorist group there. For instance, one leader is a bit separated and occupying own area now from the rest, but it may not mean they are not communicating. They just differed in as far as the approach in executing the operation. For an example, at one point in time, they took an old man next to his wife, chopped his head, put it in the bag, and said, "Take it to the mayor." So, in terms of winning the mines, seemingly there was a bit of a difference, but it's only one particular leader. We've been going for their skin where they least expect that there will be an incursion from us. So all in all, you are fighting them from their own terrain, which they have built. Remember, they've got a maritime capability of some speedboats they move with at the same time. Hence, the Chief of the Navy is emphasizing the fact that the Navy is of importance, but it is of importance as well with air capability, particularly the reconnaissance one or the patrol one in terms of the helicopter. Not at all times these capabilities will be involved. There are air capabilities that have been pledged, for instance, from Zambia, from Botswana, as well, all of that. So we can do better in that. The major thing will be also intelligence of needing to spot them. But when you spot them, you must be able to cover that distance on those jungles, because they are literally jungles, to be able to do the trooping, to cut their lines of movement and cooperation, in operation. So a lot has been done to dislodge them, and yes, it's beginning to take effect psychologically to some degree. Maybe that's why they are recruiting the children and taking them to the madrasas of even the age about 5 years of age. And that now is exactly what is going to give us problems if we don't stop it now. Because once you have those, it's going to be difficult to do anything with them once they start being the age of 12 and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief of Staff. I take it that the issue of the role of technology as well as the role of the Air Force had been covered. We do have a limited capability, and at the same time we are simply saying, as a SAMIM, this is a SADC mission, and it's not only purely South African, but South Africa is taking a lead. Remember, South Africa currently is the chair of the Organ Troika, and the Chief of the National Defence Force is the chair of the Chiefs of the Defence of the Organ Troika. And as such, we coordinate all this effort and we do it collectively. Let me leave it at that. We currently indeed have also part of our elements in the naval environment, and it is being supported by the rest of the SADC elements. So the facilitator, I think the three questions had been responded to. We can move on.
Thank you very much, Chief. Can I now open for the next three questions? Just take note, colleagues, we are only having plus minus 30 minutes left before we come to a close of this session. There's one here, the second one, and the third one noted, ma'am. Please, can you continue, sir?
Thank you. My name is Piers Pigu. I work for an independent publication called Cabo Ligado, which provides a weekly and monthly review of the situation in Cabo Delgado. I've got lots of questions, but I'll try and keep to just a few of them. With respect to the air asset issue that has been referred to already, could you make a specific comment about the potential import of helicopter gunships in the current operational field, given what the Chief of Staff has said about the need to be able to rapidly respond and deploy? To what extent is that a major handicap, given the terrain you're operating in, particularly in the context of the raids? I'd like to ask what your opinion is, General Mapwanya, about the establishment perhaps of dialogue and defection corridors and the potential of that for insurgents. This goes to the issue of how many insurgents may be actively in the field. We saw reported SADC or SAMIM was estimating, interestingly, only in November, only 300 insurgents active in the field. I don't know whether that was simply in the SANDF area or whether that was a total estimation from SAMIM at the time, which raised a number of questions about where have the rest of them gone, given the claims on the numbers killed in action and captured, and the concern about infiltration back into communities themselves, or indeed back into more remote areas where they may play a waiting game, so to speak. Time is on their side. So I'm curious about your thinking in the shift from scenario 6 to scenario 5, about the prospects and the investment potential of looking at reaching out to communities with that possibility of looking at defection corridors. We've seen other extremist situations elsewhere. And lastly, a question about captured insurgents. What's happened to them? And do you see that they should be processed through the criminal justice system in terms of its capacity? So curious about your thoughts on that in the context of that shift also back to scenario 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. There was a hand. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, may you repeat your name again, please?
Yes, it's Pigu, P-I-G-O-U. Surname, P-I-G-O-U.
I'd like to find out the woman referred to where assets are done. They plan to take away.
Sorry, sir. Your name first, please. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Sir?
Sorry, General Graham Hosking again, Times Live. In terms of South Africa's involvement in Operation Buffalo, can you elaborate please on exactly what roles our soldiers played? Was it just air asset support, or did we play any other active roles in the 4-month operation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we, through the Chief, respond to the questions?
Thank you. I want to start off with the one by Pigu in terms of the air assets and the potential input of the attack helicopters, and whether there is a handicap in view of the terrain without the use of the air assets. I just summarized it that way. I want to caution that whilst we are dealing with an open discussion, we need to be conscious of the security aspects in terms of the deployed assets as well as the modus operandi. I would like to respond to all the questions, but I will shy away from responding to questions that are more inclined towards the assets as well as, because this mission is not a South African mission, and if it was a South African mission, I would gladly divulge whatever the South African people need to know. However, I will say that troop contributing countries have pledged certain capabilities to enhance the mission. And all those capabilities that are required, that the countries have pledged, they have stood by their word. I happen to have been party to some of the deliberations, and one of the areas that we said we need to do is each and every country that pledge must at least stick to their pledge, and we have attempted to do so. Let me now come to a difficult one, because opinions are some of the most dangerous things, because as I said from the onset, I don't have the monopoly of knowledge, and my opinion may not necessarily be the view of SADC. And as such, I will say that in terms of the defection corridor, I think there had been an effort from the host country in terms of allowing that those that are either captured or rescued are brought to the base. It is being processed, they are being processed by the integrated intelligence element that includes the host country and the troop contributing countries. So the intelligence cell, because the intelligence cell comprises of all the elements, including the host country, and the host country becomes more important because of the language as well as the cultural understanding of those that might have crossed. So we have got at least a system. I happen to have been fortunate to sit and ask questions from the people that had been captured. Actually, well, I cannot say those that had been captured or that had been rescued. Yeah. So I see that they are being handled in a way that is humane. They are voluntarily engaging with us when we want to engage them. So when I was in Cabo Delgado, as I said, I went to all the front lines. I went to Nangada, I went to Moeda, I went to almost all the areas where the people had been deployed. And I have spoken to all the contingents. I've spoken to the Tanzanians, I've spoken to the Botswana, I've spoken to almost Lesotho. I had been to the area where South Africa is deployed as well. So, as the chair of the Chiefs of Defense Forces, I went there with the view to say, this is a SADC deployment. Now, coming to the area of numbers. Numbers are quite interesting, because when you are dealing with the enemy that is of that nature, you will have estimates, and that is what the intelligence fraternity will tell you. It is not wise to stick to what is said in terms of there are 300. 300, are you referring to people that are currently visible with guns? Are you referring to the entire total number? Because in terms of the insurgency concept of fighting, you said it rightly that sometimes they blend with the people. And when they blend with the people, you're not going to be able to count and say, amongst those 5 that are passing there, 2 is the insurgents. So it becomes a question of an intelligence estimate. And as an intelligence estimate, it is up to the processors to come up sometimes, you know, in war, there is what is called psychological warfare. I will give you an example of a certain battle where 5 people were cornered and they were played psychologically because you say, raise your hands. You are the only one left. Because they say, they knew that they were 5. But because they wanted each and every person to think individually, the loud hailer was saying, raise your hands. You are the only one who is left standing. So, but because they were in close proximity and they could hear the fire, they didn't. They continued firing until when those who were claiming to say he is the only one left, then they retreated and they regrouped and they escaped. So, a psychological part of warfare is that you play in the minds of people. Maybe by saying there are only 300, it's part of the game. I'm not saying that was the reason, but I'm saying this is much more in the realm of both intelligence and psychological warfare, which actually are issues that are in the battle domain. I will leave that one. I told you I'm not going to answer you directly because I am not going to give my opinion as though it's the opinion of SADC. And again, operational matters needs to be guarded because of operational security. The next issue was by Sam. Sam was asking in terms of the air assets and directly again touching on the operational capability. We are not going to deny or accept that we might have an intention to deploy the rifle or any attack helicopter, because SADC as a region has various attack helicopters, and as such, as well as the issue of the deployment of the armored vehicles, we have got all what is required for us to fight, though it might not necessarily be sufficient or enough. But yes, it is not far-fetched to say that during some of the skirmishes, some of the armored personnel carriers, one of the armored personnel carrier from one of our troop contributing countries got hit, and as such, it means therefore, it answers to the question whether there are armored personnel carriers in the area. Because if one had been hit, it goes without saying that indeed there are armored personnel carriers in the contingencies. But in terms of numbers and in terms of where, I will leave it to the operators to utilize. The issue of who is paying for our contribution to SAMIM. SAMIM is the first operation that SADC actually conducted, and we agreed as a region that the funding model will be determined, and part of what is used for funding this operation is coming from our peace fund within the SADC, and the SADC Secretariat worked out the modalities of the contributions. It is us, we are literally as the region, and we must be proud to say for the first time that we carried out this mission without any help of somebody else. It is now that we are realizing that we need to bring other people to come and assist. But from the onset, we said, no, we're not going to wait for any other person to tell us as to what is it that we must do in terms of securing and giving assistance to our sister country. So it is the SADC Secretariat representing the regional organ that is given the responsibility to secure funding for this mission. So currently, there are certain elements that we had funded ourselves. If we pledge 20, and we see that in order to support that 20, we need 25. The 5 over and above becomes your responsibility. And that is the principle that is used both in the UN and in the AU. So we are also getting a system of disbursement. Disbursement in the sense that whatever the countries have contributed together with what had been put in by the Secretariat, that money, when we utilize certain capabilities, the calculations that had been given to through contributing countries get them to calculate as to how much should be disbursed. And the country, there is up to so far as of the last summit, the reports were that all those disbursements had been disbursed. The issue had been the various national banks in terms of receiving those disbursements. But SADC had done everything possible to do that disbursement. I think I've touched on the SAM's issue of both the rifle, the armored vehicles, and the payment for SAMIM. The last one, which is remaining, is from Graham. In terms of South Africa involvement in Op Buffalo, it is not only the asset. When Khadebe passed on, may his soul rest in peace, it was part and parcel of Op Buffalo. But operations are conducted in phases. I will leave it at that ours was not only the provision of air asset, but we are doing this collectively. And I would like to add that there is also synergy between SAMIM, FADAM, and the Rwandese that are deployed on the ground. So when I went to Cabo Delgado, I went to Msumbo de Praia and had a discussion with the commander of the Rwandese contingent in Cabo Delgado. We worked out a mechanism to say, we are all here for a sole purpose, to support the people of Mozambique and rid this area of the scourge of terrorism. And therefore, we don't have opposing interests. That is what we agreed on, to say, hey, we need to plan together, because you cannot be complacent and think that in your small corner of your deployment area, you will be safe unless if collaboratively we share both in terms of intelligence to say, in my area of interest, this is what is happening. And they will not play you such that they move from your area without the other adjacent areas knowing. So in battle, it is easier when you share and the adjacent units understands what is happening in the other area. So Op Buffalo had been an integrated operation that involved all the forces that are on the ground, and we have achieved successes, as I had reported earlier. I don't know, I have taken too much space because I wanted to save time, but I think if there is any other addition, both the members of the panel can come up with the inputs. Chief Joint Ops. Chief Joint Ops, if Chief Joint Ops is happy, then it means indeed they were all answered. General Mahapa.
Thank you very much, Chief. Can we take the last three, please, so that we can come to a closure? Please, ma'am. Yes, Erika.
General, I'm not sure if you want to has there been any serious threats, or the threat is not, has there been any fallout between any of the countries? Some of the countries, treat countries, for whatever reason, on a leadership level, political level, whatever, might have threatened to recommit what they originally committed. For whatever reason.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Yes, sir.
The opportunity. General Piers Pigu again. Wondered whether you felt now after 8 months in the field you had a better understanding of the nature of the relationship between insurgents on the ground and Islamic State. You've captured bases, you've secured materials from those bases, and presumably some level of analysis of materials from laptops and other propaganda materials. I wonder whether you can comment on that. And this is a more difficult one, perhaps, is because we've seen criticism of, in some instances, about attacks from insurgents in Nangade and Makumea, in which SAMIM forces have been accused of not responding adequately or quickly enough to those attacks. Obviously, I can't ask you to speak on behalf of the contingent in Nangade, but in Makumea, where the South Africans have been largely operating, I wonder whether you have any comments about that, because the concerns were the attacks were literally a few kilometers away from where our troops were based, but the response was very, very slow. And I'm just curious, it's very difficult to have a generalized comment on that, but we've seen this concern raised on several occasions now in the last few months.
Thank you very much, sir. The last question. Thank you. Chief, please.
Thank you. I wanted to say, let me be diplomatic, but I'm not going to be diplomatic. I will try and respond as objectively as possible, because the idea here is to allow our people to have at least an insight in what we do as the military and our contribution to the mission. The question by Erika is that, is there a threat? He said a threat is not well suited. But the essence is that, is there any fallout, basically, between the SADC countries in terms of the pledges and the continuation of what they have pledged to the mission? That is a very interesting observation, because in all the summits and the meetings that had been held, I was fortunate that I attended almost all of them, except for 1 week before last. It was last week where I couldn't attend for other reasons. In all the meetings, there had been unanimity in terms of the SADC, the unity within the SADC body, as well as the Troika. We have had quite a number of meetings that were called by the Commander-in-Chief as the chair of the SADC Troika organ. And those meetings included troop contributing countries plus Mozambique to make it relevant to the problem. In all the meetings that were there hadn't been any show of division amongst the leaders. The meeting starts with the senior officials, and then the senior officials, they brief the chiefs of the defense forces, and the chiefs of the defense forces, they brief the ministers, and the ministers, together with the chiefs of the defense forces, brief their respective presidents. In short, I would like to say that there hadn't been, both at the political level and at the military level, any sign that we would like to resist from what we have pledged. There had been one incident whereby there was a pledge by one country, and that pledge was supposed to come in, and there were the assets that were pledged were not withdrawn. The pledge was not withdrawn, but there was an indication that because they were going to have elections, they may need some of those platforms, to utilize those platforms during the period of their elections. And that is the only time maybe that one can say there had been a request, not a direct withdrawal, but a request to say, given the conditions of our terrain, during the elections we may not be able to monitor the elections, and allow us at least to make use of those assets. And if there is any other country that can replace those assets in the meantime, let that country at least pledge to replace that. That is the only time that one can say it's almost closer to what Erica had been asking. But in terms of politically, the SADC and the Troika stand united. I have seen not only the communique, because the communique is what is given to the media, but the atmosphere in all the meetings that I attended, it is a very united and a much more stronger SADC that I ever had observed. So currently we haven't really had a challenge in terms of our contributions. In terms of what Pigo again said, we captured quite a number of assets, and the laptops, memory sticks, cell phones, they were all taken into the fusion, the intelligence fusion cell, and a lot of information was sifted out of those assets. So are the equipments that were found in the bases of Al-Sunna. So we could conclusively say that one, there were few madrasas that were being run in the bases. Two, they were making use of children to indoctrinate them. That is part of what we saw in the visuals and what we have deciphered from the laptops. I think in terms of the nature of the relationship between Asuna and the rest of the other entities, I will say the flags as well as the, the messages that you see on those laptops and the memory sticks tells you in terms of the linkages. I am not going to pinpoint any specific area or country, but there are linkages that we derived out of the material that we captured. Yes, there is an issue that is raised in terms of the slow response. I said earlier that when I went to Mzimboa prior to meet up with the commander of the Rwandese Defense Force, I emphasize the need to be responsive to the challenges that we all are facing. And one of the areas that I emphasized on was we need to have a planning session together. We need to have regular meetings so that if they are conducting an operation, it must not be a surprise for the elements that are adjacent to their area of responsibility. Because immediately you attack, the likelihood is that under fire they will move out of the sector and get into the other sector that belongs to the other region. The country, or rather Cabo Delgado, had been divided into several areas of responsibility, as you mentioned. So part of what you are raising are part of the results of that lack of coordination, because when that coordination was there, and that is the thing of the past, because currently when Rwanda is conducting an operation, they will also plan it in conjunction with both FADAM as well as the SAMIM component. So avoiding that element of the enemy or insurgents moving to the other area without the commander in that area knowing. The response, I may not say, because slow is a relative term. You can be 5 minutes there, but people are dead, and by so saying, it means you were slow because you responded when people have died. You remember in every operation there are things that we call deployment drills. It's not like a fire brigade whereby you will find that fire, 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 then everybody scramble and get into the truck. There are specific drills that must be conducted to say, this is, even if we are not going to do an appreciation, this is where it is reported that there is a problem. Now, what is the nature of the problem? And maybe 5 minutes, but that's what I'm saying, that is more subjective when we say it's slow, because it's a relative. I'll leave it at that, because I won't go beyond that in terms of that. And I don't know if there is anything more that we would like to add in terms of what people are saying. Yes, people want to see speedy response, and that is what we give within the deployment drills. Orders up to execution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief of the South African National Defence Force. Colleagues, allow me to thank the Chief of the National Defence Force, General Mapanya, and the panel for responding to the question raised. And not forgetting to thank you, the media, because you are an important stakeholder to us. And I request that next time when we request the media brief, you'll really do as you did today. We truly appreciate, and we continue to support your work. Now, allow me to invite the media for a light lunch while the Chief and the panel will withdraw. The colonel standing there at the door will lead you to the area where you're going to join the Chief
for a light refreshment. Thank you very much. May the chief and the panel withdraw, please.
Before I withdraw, may I request that the media allow us to inform them constantly of what we do, and may Hawk and DCC make it a point that the media must not come and hunt for us. Rather, let us hunt for them and tell them what is happening in their defense force. Thank you.
Noted, sir.
It shall be done.